first question, and Senator Eddie Eckert will be the first to answer the first question. This is the Fair Scheduling, Wages, and Benefits Act. This bill requires an employer to post the employee's initial schedule at least 21 days before the first day the employee is scheduled to work, and notify the employee within 24 hours of any changes made to their initial schedule, and then provide them with a revised work schedule. The employer also may not require the employee to work hours not included in their initial work schedule without written consent with the employee, or require the employee to find another employee to cover any hours the employee is unable to work. Within 21 days before the first scheduled shift, the employer may change or reduce the length of the scheduled shift, cancel an employee's shift, or change the start or end time of an employee's schedule or shift if it does not alter the total hours scheduled for work during a work week. Whew. Yeah. The Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce, along with the State's Chamber of Commerce, oppose the erroneous bill because it prevents employers from being flexible in meeting the fluctuating demands of the economy, and it also creates a burdensome administrative cost for the employers. Please tell us your position on this bill. Addie.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. At the end, I'll do it now. I'm going to take this time to say, first of all, I want to present to you all an official citation on behalf of the delegation, so I'm using my time. This is your 30th anniversary, so I want to make sure that you all have that, because we deeply appreciate what you do to keep your businesses informed. Regarding the fair scheduling bill, I think large employers, to the extent possible, already do this. Where this is going to be a real issue is with the smaller businesses who have to have a little more flexibility than that 3-week notice. I've worked in an agency. I worked at Eastern Shore Hospital Center, and scheduling became a nightmare even when you tried to do it 3 weeks or a month in advance, because there are a lot of reasons that people need to be out. So I think it's very important that we have that flexibility. I personally think business needs not to have government in telling them what to do.
Thank you. Sherry, sample use.
And Cherie. Good afternoon,
Cherie,
everyone.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I do that every time.
You do. You don't think about Stevie Wonder's "My Cherie" more. But certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. With regards to this particular bill, I think it's kind of one of those where you kind of you like a little bit of it and you don't like a little bit of it. I'm just going to be honest with you. The point that I would like to say about this is that I believe our businesses are very much in tune as to what the ebbs and flows are locally and nationwide, and so that's why adjustments are made in the business sector. When you know that if it's high season, for instance, our governor made a decision along with the legislature to make sure school kids are able to go back to school after Labor Day, because the economy changes. So to that end, I think that our businesses are in tune. The other piece for me that I think is beneficial is the fact that there could be and should be a level of efficiency, and there very well could be a level of savings to a business, and the fact that there should be a fair practice for employees where they are knowledgeable or aware of their schedule and be able to accommodate themselves accordingly for their families and just daily livelihood. It's a good practice. So this bill didn't make it out of committee, but certainly would love to hear more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beth?
Thank you. I first want to thank the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce for hosting and organizing this economic summit. I think it's so important. The timing of it is very important as we go into the legislative session. As far as the scheduling wages and benefits bill that you brought up, I strongly oppose this bill because I believe it's absolutely unworkable for our local employers. I've already have heard from local restaurant owners about the heavy burdens of this bill and their deep concerns and opposition to it. As someone who grew up in the Ocean City's fast food restaurant business and also someone who put themselves through school by serving at Marina Deck over the years, I can tell you it would be a scheduling nightmare for the employers, particularly during the season. So I'm committed to working with the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce, the Business Coalition, and I know there's several other organizations that are opposing this legislation to make sure that this burden is not passed on to our employers, which in the end hurts our employees. When we put more burdens on our employers, it ends up hurting our employees because it limits job growth.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary Beth. Charles? Otto?
I'll take my time. It won't be too hard to question this. Merry Christmas to everyone here. I thank my delegation for being here and being a part of this program today. The question about Fair Scheduling Wages Act, certainly I don't see the state needing to intrude more between the employee-employer relationship than already exists. And certainly I might give consideration if we add to HB 1 that we may have to attempt to override the governor's veto, a requirement for employees to give 21 days notice of when they're going to be asking for that sick leave, and we might give it consideration then. With that, I'll yield my time to the next question.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone. And this bill was heard in our committee along with Delegate Mounts. It was in my subcommittee. This bill is almost a non-starter. I like to remind myself sometimes that working in the private sector is a privilege and not an entitlement, but some of the elected officials in Annapolis see it quite the opposite. There are a couple of points that I'll raise to you as a business owner. The enforcement piece is as onerous as the provisions, and it includes a $500 violation per day per person, reinstatement of employment if fired, injunctive relief, actual damages, predictability pay, other wages plus interest, an additional amount equal to twice any predictability pay or other wages owed to employees, liquidated damages of $500 per violation, $100 violation, reasonable attorney's fees being paid and costs, and there's also the opportunity for class action suits under this bill. If this one passes, I pulled my keys out to the front door to our store, and the government might as well just, they can have the truck too at that point. The point is, this one can't possibly pass. We've got employees who, frankly, are going to end up getting this sick pay thing happening. Could you imagine me having to predict my schedule as we're giving people time off and then turn around and have to fill a schedule? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Carl?
Good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? Good. Come on, man. You got act like you just ate some lunch. How y'all doing? Good. All right. There we go. There we go. So 30 years this has been going on. I was in 7th grade when that started. I was in the principal's office at Bennett Middle, I guarantee it. It's an honor to be here. This bill, of course, I agree with the sentiment of everybody sitting at the table here. While it sounds like a good idea on the surface, but when you look at the practicality of it, it's just really cumbersome. Somebody who actually had to write a schedule on retail management, I couldn't even imagine how you could do this 21 days in advance with full-time, part-time student employees and retirees and all these different things, and then you have to find somebody to fill the spot when they're gone. For me, when I was writing those schedules, I was like, if you want off, bring me somebody to fill it, you can have it. So you couldn't do that with this, and so it's just, I think in practice, it's just very cumbersome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Before we start, for the second question, on your table are 3x5 business cards. If you have a question for the delegation, if you would fill out the card and raise the card up, we'll have a member of the staff come by, chamber staff come by and pick it up. We'll see if we can get to that question. Question number 2, I'm going to start with Delegate Otto. This is on wind power, Maryland wind power. The wind question seems to be framed by the opposing sides as a question of job creation and economic opportunity for the Eastern Shore versus the potential of aesthetic or environmental concerns which could hurt tourism. The issue seems to boil down to whether the wind farm off Ocean City needs to be built at 12 miles offshore or 24 miles, a point the current vendors indicate is cost prohibitive and could eliminate the viability of the project. What is your position on this issue, and what will you do at the state level to either encourage or discourage the development of the wind energy off the eastern shore, and why? Delegate Orr.
Thank you. This is a tough question I've struggled with in some respects because I haven't bought the Kool-Aid that all these jobs are coming from wind power. I know that cheap, efficient, produced energy is important to our economy on the Delmarva Peninsula, where we suffer from some of the highest power rates in the country. And I think what we need more is a nuclear power plant at Calvert Cliffs or some other things, and not increase in the renewable energy standards. And I don't believe the jobs are coming. And if it's inefficient to go another 5 miles offshore, then it proves the point that it's not an efficient operation to start with, and building them in a hurricane corridor. And electricity and salt water never did mix. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Delegate Chris?
Thank you. I'm not going to actually burn a lot of political capital on this. We're going to hear this in our committee this year, and I think the governor's office is yet to weigh in on it. I think it's important to understand that there are some issues with renewable energy as it relates to cost. There's a Moody's analytical briefing about Maryland, how it measures up. It talks about how electricity cost in Maryland is 20% greater than the national average. And then the Baltimore metro area has the second highest cost of electricity, including taxes, in the peer group, including New Jersey and Delaware. One of the recommendations coming from Moody's was that the electricity cost should be reduced to bring manufacturers to state, especially Baltimore region. Let me just say the ratepayers and the taxpayers are going to fund the construction of offshore wind. 2 points, because I don't have time to really go through this, and I'd like to, frankly, but one is that U.S. Wind approached Maryland Energy Administration for a $62 million front startup cost. They were turned down on that, by the way. I'd ask you simply, why are they asking for money if they didn't have their business plan straight to begin with? And the other issue is one of, you've got property owners in Ocean City. That's 10 miles of beach, pristine beach. This is Maryland's jewel, and I think you have to recognize and respect the stakeholders. I'd like to think that I'm a stakeholder as well in this regard. 5 minutes wouldn't have covered it.
Delegate Adderton.
Sure. So, this is very interesting. All this kind of started before most of us were in office, and so we're kind of playing catch up. And again, it's another thing on the premise. It sounds like a great idea. If there are jobs created, they'll be created here in Wycomico County. These are where these things will be fabricated and assembled and sent out off the seaboard. The issue with the ambiance and the vistas of Ocean City, I personally think that's probably left best answered to those who represent Ocean City. I don't really know about seeing 12 miles out into the ocean if I'm going to see windmills spinning or not. I think the globe is kind of round, but yeah, right. So I don't really know. I mean, we've all just kind of started getting into to the mire of this legislation and how it affects Maryland. And I think if we can cover up our farmland with solar panels, we could probably put some windmills out in the ocean. So that's just kind of my opinion.
Senator Eckhart.
Thank you very much. This issue's been around my whole legislative career, which is getting lengthy now. It started with Blue Water Wind when they were having the discussion about putting it either off the Eastern Shore or over in Delaware. So we met with a lot of those companies, and I think the alternatives are always worth considering. And then we in Dorchester County have a partnership with Durham County, and the Durham County experts sat on the Danish Wind Board. So they came to Dorchester County, and we explored the possibility down at the NRG plant to see if that was doable. And what we determined that because of where we are positioned, it would be very costly, A, to bring in the equipment, and then you couldn't truck it in because it was so big. You'd need to ship it in, and that would have increasing costs. So until those costs are determined to be less than they have been before, I think that's one concern that I would have. The other concern is the same issue that we're facing with all of the solar farms, quote, solar farms. How far do we go with local control? And I think the local jurisdictions do need to have a seat at the table and do need to be a part of the solution.
Thank you. Delegate Sample Hughes.
Sure. I certainly, with the question at the end was stating whether or not you're going to encourage or discourage, my take on this is that I would encourage it. Based on the information that I have read and met with, I know U.S. Wind was referenced a while ago, but in their documentation with the Public Service Commission, it was noted that over a 20-year period, about $1.8 billion of state spending would occur, direct jobs would come as a result of this. And I think that's important for our state. I think it's important for our region, and that is one particular industry that I would support. I've been a supporter of the renewable energy, clean energy, and this is one area to move us towards that realization. So that's something I'll continue to support.
Thank you. Delegate Carrozza.
Thank you. I was not in the legislature in 2013 when the Wind Energy Act was passed, so I've put additional pressure on myself to go to as many public forums. I've attended the forums in Berlin, Ocean City, Salisbury, and Annapolis, just to, number one, to try to get smarter on the proposed projects and the impact on our region. My general position is I'm supportive of renewable sources of energy, which would include offshore wind and the impact of local manufacturing and assembly and the jobs impact. However, that support on this specific project would be conditional that we're convinced that the projects are efficient, that the projects are not harmful to other economic drivers like tourism, and it would not result in the cost burdens on our electricity ratepayers. And so in this process, I'm learning with the PSC, there's a lot of conditions that these projects have to meet. The bottom line is, I don't think the question needs to be framed of two opposing camps. I do not accept that it has to be Salisbury manufacturing versus Ocean City tourism. I think we focus on the facts of the project, and I intend to be an honest broker and a partner and bring the different constituencies together to move forward.
Thank you, Mary Beth. That was a very important question. I'm going to read question. Delegate Carl Atherton, you will be answering first on question number 3. Education.
I get the education question.
You get the education one.
Scratch what I said about the principal's office.
Considering the impact of additional services required for successful public schools, CTE, universal pre-K, etc., discuss the need for the increase in funding, both state and local, for Wicomico County public schools.
Well, of course, it's important that we provide, the highest level of education we can. It starts, I think, with the buildings that our kids are educated in. They need to have the institutions and the tools required to compete in the 21st century that we all know. And so I think, the funding levels from the state, I think we need to at least continue that level. Of course, that should be our new basement, our new baseline, and we working with the local governments, that they should be able to give what they can. We have the maintenance effort here in Wicomico County, and I think that needs to be continually met and exceeded where can. But there's a couple things with maintenance of effort that could be adjusted, I think, to allow counties to give more when they have it, and then that not become the new baseline for them, because then that becomes really cumbersome years out. But I think whatever we can do to make sure that our Board of Ed and our superintendent have the tools they need, we have to do. There's just no other way.
Thank you. Senator Eckhart.
Thank you very much. Quality education is important for all of our students, and I, too, agree. We have that adequate funding needs to be provided for those activities. And one of the things that the state has done is provide incentives for all-day kindergarten, and then we are stepping that up. That also has an impact at the local level. So again, it's up to the local jurisdiction as well to be able to provide those funding. The memorandum, the MOE that Delegate Anderton talked about, there does need to be some flexibility with that. All of this is being talked about with the commission that's been meeting all this year. I'm not sure that they have come up with their recommendations yet, and they may need more time. We're going to have a lot of competition for new spending, for new funding this year, and it's going to be a real difficult challenge, I think, as we go into this election year with a lot of the, I guess, the posturing that goes with an election year to be able to make those determinations. But definitely, I think the all-day kindergarten and the engagement of the local jurisdictions are important.
Thank you. Delegate Sample Use?
Sure. Certainly, I think all of you know in this room, if you don't, that I'm a staunch supporter for bricks and mortar. I want to make sure that our young people are in buildings that are adaptable to their needs, and every day I drive by West Salisbury, and the closer and closer it gets to being completed, and the more happier I am. So certainly to that end, on the capital side, I'm going to continue to support that and always will. Secondly, with regards to the pre-K expansion, our county, Wacomico County, has certainly been forecasting what that looks like and what it will look like, and the need is there. So to get the state, the federal, and the local partners all together to make sure we have those resources in place are very vital because it is a movement that needs to be taken care of. And the third point that I'll make with regards to education, our young people are changing, and I'm saying in the sense of there's more bullying going on, there's more and more problems that are occurring, and our young people need to, and they go to the school system, if you will, as a safe haven and as a venue where they're going to need more and more people to connect with, communicate with. So unfortunately, it's not always in the budget locally that they have enough money to take care of social workers or any other people who can intervene, but they need that, and that's something I'm going to continue to support.
Thank you. Delegate Carrozza?
For the past year, I've been attending as many meetings as possible for the statewide Commission on Innovation and Excellence, known as the Kerwin Commission. One of the reasons that I've been attending those meetings, making that effort, is because I want to make sure there is fair funding for the shore, and I also want to make sure there's a continued focus on careers, technology, education. One thing that I've been very encouraged about, and I was delighted to see the focus this morning in the forum, is the partnerships that you're talking about, recognizing the needs of our local employers, and then how we truly are partnering with our local school systems. I want to continue to be part of those partnerships.
Thank you. Delegate Otto?
Thank you, Bill. The education certainly is the biggest factor that we have. That's our full responsibility to the General Assembly is to pass a budget, a state budget, and adequately fund a public education system. And so it is a challenge, and our colleagues have talked briefly about the Kerwin Commission that's going on, and it's going to be our responsibility to see that the formulas aren't changed in a way that are restrictive to our jurisdictions and our school systems. School construction is going under a change of leadership there, and how that's going to impact us. It's functioned quite well, and we have gotten our portion over the past few years with the way it was arranged, but I still see the need. I happen to be the first kindergarten class in Somerset County. I remember it well because we had all new toys, and it was half day in Mount Vernon. So we do see a change, and pre-K may very well be a part of it.
Thank you. Delegate Adams?
First off, I'm a true fan of Dr. Hanlon. We've met a lot and talked about the priorities you share, and pre-K happens to be one of those, and I share your interest in that and how we can make that happen for Wacomico County. I will share with you, to add on to Delegate Carrozza, that formula-based spending is very important. The Kerwin Commission was designed to help our rural counties get their fair share, which we have some concerns with. However, the Hogan administration has demonstrated a true will to fully fund education, and I'll just read off briefly that for the third year in a row, Governor Hogan made a historic investment in K through 12 public education, totaling $6.4 billion in 2017. Since taking office, he's invested $19 billion in K through 12 spending while fully funding every formula-based assignment that is given to our budget. So for me, there's going to be some conversation as to, as a dad, we know education starts the day the child's born. And how do we help our children who don't have that same opportunity in life? Because for us to get our children to Dr. Hoy, it has to start at birth, basically. And I think we do have to make those kind of investments and find a way here in Wicomico County to see that happen. I'd like to advocate for that moving forward.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to go to question number 4, and Delegate Sample Hughes, you will be the first to answer. It's on college, education, and debt. Among bills that the Maryland Chamber of Commerce supported during 2017 legislative session, 2 that did not pass were HB 868 and SB 869, Workforce Development Funding for Community Education, and HB 1483 and SB 522, Income Tax Credits for Internships. The State Chamber believed that these 2 bills might have value in combating the so-called brain drain. The brain drain has been an issue of concern for business and government leaders in Salisbury and the Lower Shore for years. What are some of the ideas or steps you can take at the next legislative session to combat the brain drain?
Well, certainly, we've been hearing the brain drain for years. It's almost, I want to believe at some point we are moving in a better direction to help to safeguard some of our young people and keeping them here, because there has been movement. One of the things in particular I would like to highlight, in the legislature, a women's caucus, I'm currently serving as the president-elect, and we have made it a point to infuse our internship program back into reality. And we're doing that for many reasons, to ensure that young people wanting to be beside us, seeing what we do in this capacity, but getting them the skills necessary and their mindset in the place where they know that they are being valued right here in the state of Maryland. And that's key, for young people to understand that and to really believe that. That keeps them a little bit closer to where we need them to be. The other piece is that just on yesterday, the legislative delegation, we had a meeting here at Salisbury University, and we talked about some of the funding challenges in making sure that our young people have the ability to access financial aid to our institutions, and making sure that they are able to stay a little bit local to be able to afford college. And so that is something that I think is very important, because we don't want everybody graduating with a boatload of debt. We want them to be able to be successful and stay here locally and raise their family and move forward.
Thank you very much. Delegate Carosa.
Thank you. I'm going to continue to focus on the partnerships, and we all heard Dr. Hoy's presentation earlier today with the 3 higher education institutions being employers, but I want to focus on those partnerships. As Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes just mentioned, our delegation has met with all 3 of our higher education institutions in the past couple weeks, and what's become very clear is there's some specific partnerships that we can work on. One, at UMES, we talked about the pilot shortage and how UMES academic programs can meet the needs of that pilot shortage. At Warwick, we talked about some of the challenges with certain bills that could hurt the administration of Warwick, such as the collective bargaining bill, that we have to push back again, because that actually ends up impacting our students and how many students then can continue to pursue higher education. At Salisbury University yesterday, we talked about the new College of Health and Human Services, which is very exciting because healthcare is such an economic driver across the country, but right here on the shore. So I look at this as far as when we look at college education, Dr. Hoy's point about an educated workforce meeting the needs of our local employers so our young people will stay here on the shore.
Thank you. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Bill. As my colleague said, we met here yesterday and talked about the brain drain and opportunities and having the economic advantages given to our institutions to keep people here and have the educational opportunities here so that they stay local, be it at the Peninsula Regional Medical Center or Atlantic General or in the hospitality industry or in our poultry industry. I think we've done well to improve that over the years, having these economic opportunities and seeing the statistics that Dr. Hoy and Mimo gave earlier, I think we're on the right track, that we will keep our children home and let them have their families here. And I see so many coming back as retirees. I think we're moving in the right track, and we work with our institutions together as a team, and much as this organization, collectively for the lower Eastern Shore economy, and we'll make great strides.
Thank you, Delegate Adams.
Yeah. You know, I as an employer here in town, 30 employees, let me just share with you that we like low taxes, light regulation, and a welcoming environment for us and our employees. You know, for the past 10 years, this has been a very tough environment to do business in. Many employers have gone out of business. Ones that have remained have had to cut back. So you have to answer that question within the context of what's happened, both from the economic standpoint, but also politically, because it's been tough on the Eastern Shore watching some of the things that have come down the pike from Annapolis. We like local control. We like to be able to run our business without too much regulation, and we fight this every day. This is a 5-minute answer, and I'm getting the 15-second mark. Let me just say to you, you solve the brain drain by giving children who go through college the chance to work locally. Not every local opportunity needs to be public sector. It should be private sector. That's where I see the best opportunity moving forward for our region, is to try to get private sector employment up. And thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Adderton.
Just like this. This is how you do it, brother. All right, so we've educated our students. They're young adults. They're ready to start a family. So what do we need? We need employment opportunities. So we've done a few things here lately to help encourage that, and that's the More Jobs for Marylanders Act that was passed last year. The state of Maryland passed a tax incentive program for job growth. I think that should be celebrated. This year, the governor, I had the opportunity to be with him last week. We've gone a step further. 2.0. 1.0 is good, but we all know 2.0 is better. So now this will expand those tax credits to more higher-end employers to come into Maryland and to then set up shop and hire our college graduates so that way they can stay home, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking to leave because it's not a great place to call home. They're looking to leave because they want to be able to afford to call it a place to call home. And so we're going to get there step by step. But when this happens, we're going to need the county to step up. We're going to need the city to step up if that's where these businesses want to relocate. We have 3-tier taxing here in Maryland: municipal, county, and state. And so in order for this thing to work, it's got to be done in all 3 levels. We'll get there.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delegate Enderton just stole all my thunder because actually the More Jobs for Marylanders Act took place in our committee, and actually it was a way to merge the other 2 bills that you referenced, because we wanted to get students involved. We wanted incentives for apprenticeships. We wanted the tax credits. And I have to tell you that the Department of Commerce and Business, if you have a business and you want to do all of that, call them. Come in and have a sit down, because they have a whole list, a whole inventory of all the different opportunities. And if push comes to shove, we can always expand the EARN program. But I think we really need to be creative, and we're doing it as we speak. And I'll give you an example. It's what the community can put together. In downtown Cambridge, we have a new community radio. That community radio station has retirees who've been in the industry for years. And guess who they bring in to work for them? High school students are running the station with them. That's where those students who are interested in radio are going to learn a lot about it, and then have the incentive that we can provide for them through higher ed to be able to go on and get a degree. So I think apprenticeships, mentoring is really an important piece, along with what government's doing to keep our kids here.
Thank you, Senator Eckhart. That's our, now we have questions from the floor.
Uh-oh.
This will be Chris.
This will be easier.
Delegate Adams, you get the first one. And this is really something that I'm interested in, because it talks about craft beer. Will the General Assembly fix House Bill 1283, craft beer bill?
Are you going to put me on the timer? Our committee had a briefing on this. You're going to put me on the timer. Our committee had a briefing on this 2 weeks ago and fully vetted this. I can tell you that the leadership in Annapolis, Mike Bush, absolutely, as opposed to the nature with which the comptroller is bringing this issue forward. I'm not sure politically how we get to where we need to be, because I support EVO, I support RAR, I support all of our brewers as I would any business in any industry. The challenge is, and the way it's been articulated to me, is that alcohol is a regulated beverage. There's a safety issue that comes with it, and that the state of Maryland has a passionate interest in protecting the interests of our citizens. There's going to be rub as to whether or not I think that goes overboard for the benefit of economic development. Last year I supported a bill, you're going to give me more time. I supported a bill last year that helped Diageo locate in Baltimore County. This is Guinness. At the same time allowing a large manufacturer like that in the state of Maryland. There had to be some stopgaps and some limitations as to how we allow that business model to expand throughout the state. We grandfathered in every existing brewer that was in place. That's why I could support a bill like that and sponsored that bill, frankly. This year is a whole different conversation, and I'm thinking it's going to be tough.
Thank you. Delegate Atherton.
Beer, all right.
Beer.
So what's happening now is the state of Maryland is actually trying to catch up with Wicomico County. Us up here in 2015, we passed a bill for brewers in Wicomico County to double the output production you can in any other county in the state. And so I had the awesome privilege recently to meet some of the folks at Evolution Craft Brewing who've been hired because of the additional output. That's the whole point of everything. You know, something we did up here actually created an opportunity for somebody to make a living. And so aside from how awesome that is, you know, spreading this out statewide only will then expand this across the state and let everybody else catch up to us. And really, for us, we're deficient when it comes to brewing, when it comes to Delaware. And that's the whole point, is trying to be competitive with our neighboring states. And so with what the comptroller's doing, you know, I think it's a great idea, especially on the surface. And as we get into it, you know, we'll find more about it. There you go.
Senator Eckhart.
Thank you very much. I sat on the Alcoholic Beverages Task Force or Committee for years when I was on Economic Matters. And Maryland does have a very highly regulated three-tier liquor system. And that's one of the issues. It's been sacred for a very long time, and I think there's a lot of fear that because the wholesalers, the producers, and the retailers are all so-called protected to be able to do business within their category and each other, and it's well-defined, that the increase in craft brewery and the increase of production and wine sales and, you know, doing all of those more vertically integrated functions in the same business is very threatening to that system, and that's what we're seeing. I think the comptroller has gone way to the extreme of trying to make a statement to be able to shake this all up. But there's going to be quite a battle, I think, before us, before it settles out. It would be easier, in my estimation, to kind of pick a step in the right direction and keep the conversation going so that everybody gets comfortable with some of the changes that I think could happen.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Sable Hughes.
Sure. You had started the question with, are we able to fix it? I certainly do not have a crystal ball, given the fact I'm one of 141 in the House. But certainly, I think that, you know, what we have been able to experience here in Wicomico County and in Dorchester County as well is expansion of business, an industry that is thriving. And to that end, that is something that I think is positive. We had the opportunity to walk through RAR recently in Dorchester County and to see the passion there of the persons who are working there, the people who are living there and frequenting the businesses, I think is important. People have to have a balance. So to get in the nuts and bolts of this piece of legislation and the comptroller and the governor and the Speaker of the House, that's really not an area for me at this juncture, because it's important to understand what happens in that committee, which Delegate Adams serves on that particular committee and gets to hear all the ins and the outs. So to that end, I'm going to continue to listen and see what is best, but certainly I'm not going to sit here today and say I'm going to fix it because that's not my role at this juncture.
Thank you, Delegate Carrozza.
The local beer breweries are an important local economic driver for us, and it's also a driver for the whole state. And they have brought, the industry has brought legitimate questions about fairness and balance. And as a result, I think what you saw happen is with the controversy of the bill that was passed, obviously it did not meet the needs of our local breweries. And so you had Comptroller Francho take a step up and really delve into the minutia and really go all around the state to figure out, look at the fairness of this. The bottom line is, just so everybody's crystal clear, any alcohol bill is complex. They tend to be controversial, complex, and we really are going to defer to our members in our Eastern Shore delegation on the House Economic Matters Committee, Delegate Chris Adams, Delegate Johnny Mounts, to work, really in detail on this issue. So those of us who aren't on that committee, and also the interaction from our own local beer distributors and manufacturers, give us that feedback. But it's a red flag issue, folks.
Thank you. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Bill. This is a complicated question, and I thought we had fixed it when that bill passed last year, to be quite honest with you, because all sides had agreed upon it. And matter of fact, I am quite concerned about the beer distributors I represent. They employ a lot of people. We have a lot of businesses that depend on their value service of getting the product there, to have it there when the customers need it. And they also distribute a lot of craft beers from local producers as well. And so it is a balancing issue, and the comptroller has that job of regulating that industry. And we also have other issues with alcohol to deal with. Wycomico and Somerset and Montgomery counties are the only ones that have liquor dispensary systems still. And that's going to have to be tackled at some point in time, that whether does the government need to be in the liquor business. So good luck. Keep us informed, and I'm always listening for good ideas.
Next question will be Delegate Carrozza. Please share your views on a third Bay Bridge span.
I'm for it.
I'm going to take a listening approach to it, because I have to tell you, if you all know anything about me, I'm not going to have a knee-jerk reaction to it, because on these issues, I want to better understand, what the costs are involved, what the true time frame is involved, what are our budget realities. Obviously, I'm focused on making sure that the shore, that we continue to grow. We know what our transportation challenges are, but as far as, locking in on a specific proposal today and saying this is the way to go, I really would like to better understand all the information before taking that position.
Thank you. Delegate Otto. Up again.
That's a good question, and I'm much like Delegate Carrozza. What do you say? 20 years ago, before I ran for office, I wanted to blow up the two bridges we had. To be quite honest with you, but it's interesting how you evolve over time. And also, I represent Somerset County. The Latin words on our seal is always the same. So do we want that change to come? The citizens will have to decide that, but more importantly, the pocketbook's going to decide it. We have a traffic situation up there. The Bay Bridge and 301 are an alternative to the Baltimore-Washington Metro Corridor, and we have local traffic problems. We do need another crossing, and we're going to have traffic issues here on 13 with the addition of the Bay Bridge tunnels and that expansion. So there's a lot of issues that need to go on, and we supported going forward with this Napa study, which is the next step. And any new crossing is probably going to be 30 years out, and it's probably going to be looking at a $6 billion price tag. So,
Thank you. Delegate Adams.
Simply put, I would support additional roadways that cross the Bay Bridge. Right now, that bridge is already at limit. Anytime I try to go to work in Annapolis, it can be difficult coming or going. And but for the sake of economic development for the Eastern Shore, it has to happen, right? I mean, we've seen what happened down in Virginia with the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. I remember that one was one span, and they turned it into two spans. And I love to go to Florida. I love to drive. That's a convenient way on and off. I can't imagine that being one bridge in 2017. So knowing how government works and properly, looking at the issue financially, environmentally, how we're going to do this bridge, where it's going to be located, those are questions I can't answer today. But what I would say is, standing here in 2017, I would think in 10 years we would expect to see another span crossing the Bay Bridge, and I would support that to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Delegate Hatterton.
Sure, absolutely. In order for the mart of competitive commerce to ensue, we have to have expanded crossings of the Bay Bridge. And I think we're looking at price tags from what we heard in our committee recently was somewhere from $900 million to add one lane on one bridge to a 5-lane bridge being excess of $6 billion. So, and that's in the current location. So if we were to go in any other direction further south, that number just grows exponentially. A lot of people talk about doing a bridge off of Cambridge. Well, as you know, off of Cambridge, it's marsh all the way across, so you'd have to have pilings for that bridge. So you're looking at a 30-mile bridge to go across at that point, so that's really not feasible. It looks like, from what we've heard in just conversations, is that there may be an additional bridge further north of the current Bay Bridges. But the Bay Bridge we have now is 65 years old. One of them 65, and the other one's 55, somewhere in there. So, we are definitely on the clock, and it's probably going to be 25 years before you see another bridge. So we got to do something. And the governor's already started the process.
Thank you. Senator Eckhart.
Thank you very much. I was supportive of going ahead and doing the preliminary work to look at this, because we're going to have to do something sooner or later. And I was here when we did the last Bay Bridge study, and it went in the drawer and never came out again. Actually, the least costly and the easiest would have been to go up north out of Baltimore City and come down through Kent County, but Kent County was not happy with that. There were other alternatives where the bay is narrower, further down in the bay. Dorchester's a lot of wetlands, so you're looking at wetlands mitigation and how you address that, and then you're dealing with Blackwater. But my phone was lighting up this morning while I was trying to listen, because our local counties have gotten notification that Senate Bill 24 has been introduced. Senator Riley introduced it, that takes away local input on crossing on the Bay Bridge, except for Anne Arundel County, I think. So it was a matter of putting in a bill that wants it somewhere else, but not across the current span.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Sample Hughes.
Sure. I'm certainly in favor of the process as it is at this juncture. The study that's underway, it's necessary for us to have all the information. One particular meeting that we were able to have during the session, I think it was last year, where we were asking questions. And one thing that came up was regarding the tolls. In Virginia, sometimes they have some of the automatic tolls where you just go through, you don't have to stop. Well, we were asking, thinking that was a great idea, and the engineer indicated to us that the reason that they still have physical people there taking their tolls because they need to slow down that level of traffic. It has to be slowed in order to keep up pace with the structure that is currently there. So those type of conversations and that level of education for me is very important, and I think that's necessary in order to make any decision of this magnitude. But it certainly is necessary. Where it would be, I don't know, but I'm certainly going to continue to be educated on it and know that we are in need of it, because the need is there. The need is great. Oftentimes I'm sitting on the bridge and waiting to get across, and or coming back on that eastbound single lane. Hate that totally. But nevertheless, we do what we have to do, and it's important for us to know that it's going to be beneficial to our Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have for questions, but I want to give each one of you 1 minute for closing remarks, and we'll start with Senator Eckhart.
Oh. Thank you very much. I appreciated the forum this morning, and I extend happy holidays to each and every one of you. There are going to be a lot of initiatives coming forward this year. We've been working on addressing our communities through housing, land banking, expedited foreclosure, and tax sale process. That's been very important to downtown Salisbury, so we will be introducing a package of bills for that. Getting connected and maintaining internet and broadband and cell coverage is really important on the Eastern Shore. We've met with the task force, and we will be making recommendations to be able to move that forward as well. And as we continue to work toward the integration of a holistic delivery system with regard to health, so that we treat the whole person, not just the addiction or not just the mental illness or not just the physical illness. It's important to bring that together. And the other issue is workforce, how we expand our workforce training and grow our own in all avenues is very critical.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Sample Use? Sure.
It's certainly been a pleasure to be here today, as always, to see many, many faces in the community, to be able to get firsthand what the challenges and what the opportunities have been in your business and or your organization. So I would just welcome you to continue to feed us that information, because it's very important for us. I know while I'm sitting on the floor getting ready to vote, I'm calling some of you in the audience, like, what do you think about this and how it's going to impact the Eastern Shore? And that's very vital. So please know that I'll continue to do that, because that's how we're able to make the best decisions possible. Some of the things that we did not discuss today, that's very, very important. I think what we'll see during the legislative session is making sure our state employees are getting their due. And for instance, I'm referring to that their state contract is up right now, and we have 20,000 employees that need to be safeguarded in the sense of making sure that they are able to meet the goals. And for instance, we have hospitals, psychiatric hospitals in the state of Maryland that need adequate staffing. We have correctional institutions that need adequate staffing. So while we look at new things on the horizon and while we introduce new legislation, we still must take care of what drives our community and our economy in the state of Maryland and our state employees. So that's one in particular I'll continue to work on. But thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you. Delegate Carrozza?
Thank you. I again want to thank the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce. I think this economic forecast meeting is just so important, and we had so many key business and community leaders here, and focusing on the partnerships. Also want to mention, it's been mentioned before, but it's significant that Governor Hogan did announce this second phase of the More Jobs for Maryland, which does expand it to Wycomico County. So that's important for us here on the shore. Second of all, want to focus on, if there's been any themes that you've heard from me today, it's about fairness and partnerships. I'm on the Budget Committee, so that pretty much allows you to be involved in all aspects of the budget. I'll be supporting Governor Hogan's budget and working many of our issues through the budget process. And one issue that wasn't discussed that I wanted to bring up is the heroin opioid epidemic. I again want to give Governor Hogan credit for his leadership by declaring it an emergency. It really does break down some of the bureaucratic barriers and allows the locals where the solutions need to be driven in our own communities to emerge. So that's something that we will continue to work on this session.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Otto, please.
Thank you, and thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event again. Merry Christmas to all, and if I don't get a chance, Happy New Year. We're going to have an interesting session, I'm sure. It's election year. People get strange ideas in election years, and they have certain constituencies to cater to, and we'll have some long hearings, I'm sure. Some of the things we didn't talk about today that our committee will probably face is autonomous vehicles, the self-driving cars. I think we'll also say something about air travel and how important our airport is going to be to us after we saw what transpired this week in Atlanta. I think these regional airports will have a larger role in our aviation industry. So we got a lot of exciting things coming, as well as protecting our traditional institutions and job creators.
Thank you very much. Delegate Adams.
Bill Chambers and the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce, thank you for what you do. Bill, it's been a joy to work with you and learn more about your priorities, and as you bring yourself forward into the community here. Let me just say, this is, I think, the third year that I've come here. I remember the first year I came with no political experience at all, and I really questioned, after winning the election, how am I going to apply what it was that I was running on? And I had the privilege, frankly, of being assigned to the Economic Matters Committee by the Speaker of the House, Michael Bush. It was the privilege of a lifetime to be able to walk into Annapolis and have some bearing on conversations right off the bat. And so as I'm looking back now after this 3 years of serving, I can say that many of the reasons why I ran for office, I've been able to validate and be effective in that committee, working with Republicans and Democrats to get things accomplished for the benefit of our state. Our committee is conservative by nature. We don't like to pass a lot of legislation, but when it happens, usually we get a voice. And that was mainly why I ran for office, and I will run again with regards of serving the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce as best I can, knowing that I'm a business owner and I can't treat this as a full-time job. But, you know, I think that's what people voted for when they elected me, and to that end, I will fight for those things that matter most to you. I love doing it. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Delegate Adderton.
Well, it's the Boys to Men song. We've come to the end of the road. It has just been one of the joys of my life serving you in Annapolis, working for each and every one of you, carrying Wicomico County around on my sleeve and in my heart every day in the halls of our State House, working with the governor and our friends in the legislature on both sides of the aisle. And so I will continue to do that to the best of my ability. I was sitting here reminiscing in my head as Delegate Adams was staying out of the minutia, your word. That's right, brother. So you're realizing, you know, how far me as an individual, you've allowed me to grow in the past 3 years. From the first time I sat here, everybody looking at me as, oh, that's that guy, you know, to now everybody saying, oh, that's that guy, you know. So it's just been an awesome experience, and I want to thank each and every one of you sitting here for allowing me the opportunity to work for you here and in Annapolis. And as we continue to go forward working together, I see just so many great opportunities coming our way. And so, you know, let's get together and let's make it happen. Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. I want to express my thanks to the Eastern Shore delegation for coming, taking your time and supporting our community and our chamber, and coming to give us your answers and your views of what's going to happen at legislature. And we know you're there to support us, and we do appreciate you taking the time. Have happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. Bill, you have anything else? That's it for the...